This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's weird this year because the Browns had a little bit of a mini OTAs before they actually get to the OTAs. But today is actually the start of OTAs, which traditionally we say is the unofficial but official start to the 2026 year. We've kind of gotten a preview of this with that mini camp. We saw what the order at quarterback was and all of that. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of charting and everything else to be done during these OTAs. And in to help me filter through some of this chaos, you know him from 92.3, The Fan. You'd also seen him plenty of times on my channel, Mr. Mac Robinson. How you doing today, man?
Q, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. I am still kind of recovering from fully seeing the Browns schedule, understanding where we're going to be, everything like that. I know you know the opponents, but, it's always great to see that, in an opportunity to play warm weather games in December, we're playing them in August. So good, always good to see.
Yeah, it's something about the schedule being out does make it like the schedule's out. We know what this season's going to look like. We will see how closely we'll be watching this college football season too, by how this quarterback competition goes at the beginning of it. And there's a lot of noise going on about all kind of things Browns OTA related. We know where most of that noise is directed, but I wanted to kind of focus on the relevant aspects of this when it comes to the Browns as a football team, right? Because as much noise as we're going to make about quarterback over the next, it's mid-May, right? So we're talking 2 weeks plus 3 more months and probably even a month on top of that, because we're probably going to see 2 quarterbacks this year. We're going to make a lot of noise about quarterback, but the way that this team is built is not really about the quarterback, which I do think it's fascinating, right? They brought in the run game coordinator from Baltimore. They spent a lot of resources getting offensive linemen who can hit on the move, right? Which is the bulk of what they did, all free agency. So they went hard after that offensive line. They went hard after a lot of what the Ravens did well in that run game. And I see a team that is much. I think Todd likes that we're talking about quarterbacks so much when we talk about the Browns, because it might catch teams off balance to what the Browns are actually going to be, which is we might give the quarterback like 10, 15 real throws in a game. They're going to end up with like 25, 30 attempts. And I brought that up to Kobe, and Kobe was like, it's a lot. That's a lot. But I'm like, 10 of those attempts are going to be extended handoffs. Right, like the future of the Browns going to be about is about yak, and it's about running the ball. Right, how efficient can they be after the catch, and how efficient can they be by running the football? Whatever they get from quarterback is a bonus to them, because institutionally they have invested nothing at this quarterback position, like nothing, less than last year. At least they invested a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
An additional 5th round pick that year for it. Right now, they have a 6th round project in Taylor Green, a project left over from last year in Dillon Gabriel. You can technically classify Shador as a project left over from last year. He's just more embraced than Dillon Gabriel. And then you got, Deshaun Watson. Like, you got found parts in there, right? Like, you didn't really go out and buy any new bespoke pieces for this quarterback room. This is basically just what was left from last year, plus whatever you could throw in on a discount. So when, and the Browns will tell you with how they spend their money, what they find to be important. And I think they told us, y'all can talk about the quarterbacks all y'all want. If we're not running the ball well, that's the problem, right? And I think what's going to be interesting is like a lot of that we're not going to be able to tell in OTAs. But what I really do want to see them do, Mac, what I want to hear reports is, wow, the Browns really did practice a lot of running alignment out of different formations and personnel groupings. Because if I can point to what I hated last year about our run game, we only ran the ball out of 1 personnel package and 2 looks out that package.
Yep.
Like that's why the Browns had to deal with stacked boxes as much as they did, and why that it just looks so stale. I think I pointed this out while watching James Madison try to beat Oregon, and I was like, you guys see how much James Madison is managing to run the ball out of different sets, and it's creating success. And ask yourself if you ever seen the Browns do this over the last couple of years, ever. And like everybody was like, "Wow, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that." Like,
well, and it was one of my biggest frustrations last year is the fact that, when it came to the Browns in particular, when it came to the ground game, was that there was no creativity. There was no, switching up what looks you're showing defenses. It's always, all right, you know what? We're going to go 2 tight end sets. It's going to be Quincy, and he's either going to run it behind Joel Bitonio or he's going to run it behind Wyatt Teller, and that's about it. Like, you're rarely going to get the occasional toss out or toss sweep out to the outside, but even that's going to get nothing because you're not getting much blocking up front. And so when you're going ahead and dealing with that and having those struggles, obviously it's going to cause some issues when it comes to, Quinshon Judkins getting met in the hole every single time and really closing up how the way that the defenses are attacking them and attacking Quinshon up the middle. So, if you're able to get a steady ground game going, that really opens up a lot of things for you. And, to your point about, bringing in Baltimore's run game coordinator as well. And obviously, Todd Monken obviously has worked in different offenses, worked with different quarterbacks, everything like that too. I think what I find interesting after this offseason, is looking at, the piece that they did add and what they thought was interesting and how to shape the offense. And to me, what I found was just interesting. And I'm not even saying, I'm not doing direct comparisons to each player, right? But I do find it interesting that they kind of have built with the players that they've added, a kind of hybrid between the offense that you saw in Tampa Bay, where, you had those, the weapons on the outside where you could run, 3 wide receiver sets out there. Obviously you had Chris Godwin out there as more of a possession receiver, but also you still had somebody like Mike Evans as that big body on the outside. Mm-hmm. And then by comparison, in Baltimore, obviously you had the 2 tight end sets. You had Isaiah Likely there and you had Mark Andrews. But you also had Zay Flowers. That was the guy that can create, yards after the catch, everything like that. And so you add in somebody like Casey Concepcion that can kind of fill some of those Zay Flowers reps that you want. You obviously add in somebody like Denzel Boston to go ahead and kind of fill some of that Mike Evans on the outside as that bigger body contested catch receiver that also can go ahead and have solid hands for you. So, going ahead and being able to add all of these different guys, as well as adding into that tight end room where you already have a Harold Fannin and you have a couple of guys that maybe can be your inline tight end at that point for you. You have different looks that, to your point, Q, the fact that, last year you pretty much had one thing that you really could run with this offense. It was Jerry Jeudy on one side on the outside, and it was figuring out who in the hell you could put on the outside on the other. Whereas this year, it actually feels like you can run 3 wide receivers out there. You can run 12 personnel if you want to. You can really kind of have a different approach. And, I mean, hell, you can even have 2 running backs in the backfield between Sampson and Quinshon Judkins. Like, it feels like you can have different looks on offense.
You just summoned the spirit of Tony Grossi. I want you to know that. Oh, I know. You just somewhere Tony Grossi just sat up out of his bed, and he probably got the pajamas.
Full taker.
The pajamas with the little hat that they be wearing in Scrooge. And he's like, did somebody say 22? I have it's so fascinating, everybody's fascination with 22, but we have watched this team run 22 so many times and it stinks every time. And then we're like, why don't we do this more? I'm like, because all you can do out of 22 is run double Texas. And think about the concept of a Texas route and how double Texas kind of betrays it. Because it's real easy to defend in zone. Double Texas, right? It only really works if it's man coverage because you're running everything to the same point. So it's okay, maybe we shouldn't run 22 that much. I think every team tries it and then goes, okay, I don't know if it works. Unless you're legitimately willing to do some misdirection and some triple option principles. with what you're calling out of 22, you're wasting your time, right? And I honestly think this is a JP take from me, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like Wishbone should come back more than 22. Like, you want to run heavy at the goal line with 2 back there? Like, I think you can figure out something to make that work more than you can make like 22 become like a respectable offense again. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do wonder, right? Like, the parallel to the roster situation that Todd finds himself in is not really going to be found in any of his NFL stops. Like, this is the worst quarterback he's dealt with in the NFL since he's come back into the league, right? Like, with Jameis Winston, early Jameis, which wasn't great, but still a step above where we're at right now.
He kept his interceptions down. If you go back and look at the stats, the year after he left was the year that he put up 30 and 30.
Yes, it also happened to be.
And
the
I think
year.
the most interceptions that Jameis Winston threw under Todd Monken was 12.
Yeah. Now, also, I have to throw in here that was also the year Todd was in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield, and Baker was second in the league in interceptions. Well, no, was he
also
second?
Also fair.
Was he second to? Was it fake Baker that he was second to out there in Washington? Or was it Ben Roethlisberger post elbow surgery? But it
might have been Roethlisberger.
Yeah, but either way, it's like Baker was a better quarterback than what they have right now, and obviously Lamar Jackson, right? Like, I wonder how much we should look at Georgia to see what the plan's going to be for Todd in this offense, right? And what he did with a quarterback who, like, the quarterback play at Georgia wasn't good. Like, they got down to they're basically their third string guy, just rolled the dice with them, right? I wonder how much he's going to pull from that experience to try to build this team. Because, like, yeah, I mean, like, we know what these cards are at quarterback coming into the season. They're not as nice as Todd has dealt with in the NFL. So I do wonder how much he goes to that. He had a quarterback at Southern Miss that was so bad, Jimmy Haslam. Who was it? Who was the quarterback he had at Southern Miss? Was it
Wasn't it Nick Mullins?
Nick Mullins. That's the name that Jimmy was like, look what he did with Nick Mullins. Like at Southern Miss. But yeah, I do wonder how much he pulls from his college experience that we aren't really anticipating here. And I do think the drafting of Taylor Green, I don't know how much is going to come up about Taylor Green, but the drafting of him is intriguing because I want to see how they plan to develop him. Are they going to try to develop him as a regular progression read guy? Or are they going to try, or is the offense going to look very different when Taylor Green's out there? You know, because they're going to be running like some different stuff there, seeing how far they can take RPO and really like kind of leaning into the elements of his game that are more similar to what you would run. And I want to say this very particularly with Colin Kaepernick and RG3, because he's a straight line athlete and not like Lamar is very different, like as an athlete, because Lamar can go east-west really well and he can create space. Taylor's not going to create space, but if you give him space, he's gonna go, right? Like that's the thing. Yeah. So the way that the Commanders used RG3 and the way that like the Greg Roman back in the day used Colin Kaepernick as an athlete, it wasn't asking those guys to create space in the open field. It was by trying to create open space pre-snap and then just asking these guys to just sprint right at it, right? Like that's how they were successful. And that's why when, you know, I think Greg left San Francisco in like 2015 and then the play dipped immediately for Colin Kaepernick because he's not like a scramble threat. He's not good throwing on the run. And then like the same thing with RG3, where I think nobody figured it out because everybody's like, oh, he's a good athlete. So they did good athlete stuff with him. But RG3 is a good straight line athlete. He's actually pretty mediocre when it comes to the moving left to right stuff, right? Like I think people found that out when he played in Cleveland. And that's kind of a similar thing with Taylor, where I'm like, that works only one way, but I don't know who has the balls to do it. And Todd could have the balls to do it. And I'm interested to see what they really try to run there and how they try to avoid how they basically try to avoid having to lean on throwing the ball 50 times, which is something that offenses tend to have to fall into, whether they got the personnel to get away with it or not.
Well, and to build off of what you were saying about Taylor Green, I did find like the one thing that I found was really interesting in particular. Again, just kind of doing the research on him afterward, everything like that, like we always do when it comes to figuring out the little details here and there. But him talking about being at Boise State and the fact that one of his lead assistants that was helping him out and helping coach him up was Dirk Cutter, who worked with him for a few years there. And the reason why that's important is because Dirk Cutter was the one that hired Todd Monken to be the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. And so out of anybody in the NFL, Todd Monken actually, has a little bit more insight in terms of, having an assistant that worked with Taylor Green that can go ahead and say, he can go up to Dirk Cutter and just say, hey, look, man, you know what I like, you know what I look for, you know how I operate, you know how I coach. Is this somebody that behind the scenes I can work with and that you think actually would work well with me? Like, knowing my personality, you've worked with me, you've worked with me for years. Is this somebody I think that I can work with? Obviously he has a great skill set, but is it somebody that I can actually, work through, and how is he in the meeting room, this, that, the other? I don't think that you're getting that kind of a leap necessarily per se, or at least going after somebody like that. I understand it was in the 6th round, but like at least having some kind of an understanding and a comfortability in terms of taking on that kind of a project, especially it being like the first quote unquote project and foray into, the quarterback position that you're getting under Todd Monken. So, to go ahead and have somebody and have that kind of a stamp of approval, I think is actually really intriguing. Given how, the way that the rest of this roster has been built so far this offseason.
We're going to continue with this conversation, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line, I think the run game is going to be better with it. Chase Brown under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. All right, so what are we looking forward to when it comes to OTAs this year? Well, who are we trying to see now that we get the rookies together with the veterans? We got to see the veterans a little bit by themselves. Then we got to see the rookies by themselves. Now we're getting both these groups together. They're going to mesh here. What are we looking forward to, right? I think a lot of people are looking forward to seeing what Jerry Jeudy, Denzel Boston, and Casey Concepcion kind of line up for the first time as teammates.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the easy one, and I think the one that everybody's gonna kind of gravitate towards is gonna be Casey Concepcion working in that wide receiver room. I have no doubt that Denzel Boston will be able to work out fine out there. But honestly, and kind of just putting them all under the same umbrella, because I do think the wide receiver position is actually a really interesting spot finally for the Browns, where you have Cedric Tillman now trying to fight to get more playing time. Obviously, you have Denzel Boston, who really fits into that same type of a role. And again, coming into the league is at a higher level than where Tillman was when he started. So it's interesting to see where they kind of play out there. And at least according to, some of the people that I was talking to, for, the rookie camp in particular, that it seemed that Concepcion, they were really trying to get him involved in terms of, a lot of different ways, whether it be through motion, whether it be through handoffs and, quick passes onto the outside. I'm interested to see how they kind of work him in, and also how long it maybe takes him, and maybe how the chemistry is with some of these quarterbacks early on. Because, I know that we've had jokes before of the fact that, like, look at the quarterback play that he dealt with throughout college, how does that kind of translate to what he's going to be dealing with at the pro level? And so kind of seeing how that kind of works out. So wide receivers, I would say, are probably my top one. And then I think that the other thing is going to be how does it look when it comes to Fano out there at left tackle, and how does he look with the rest of that offensive line finally put together at this point, and who he lines up against, depending on if Miles comes in. And again, I
let's just get this one out the way. Miles ain't gonna be there until mandatory.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
If Miles is there, cool. Miles ain't gonna be there. I'm not gonna talk about it unless y'all get so annoying. Well, not you, but like
mandatory is in June.
Yeah,
mandatory is in June.
Yeah, unless people get so annoying about it that I have to make a video on it. No, I will not be making a video about Myles Garrett missing voluntary OTAs because I do not care that Myles Garrett does not go to that. But I do think like we'll be able to find out. I expect Spencer Fano's probably gonna have a rough first month of camp. Like I expect this from all the rookie offensive linemen going up, especially if you're going up against the first team. Only thing I can really take away from the offensive line here is like, hey, what is that center rotation like, right? Because I think that's the one part on this team we don't have any clue, right? We've heard Elgin Jenkins is at guard from, was it Andrew Berry that said he's a guard at the owners meeting?
Barry and Monken have both talked about him playing guard.
Yeah, but I think Monken also brought up him playing at center.
Monken more so than Barry.
So like you hear things like, okay, well, he could play center. A lot of people are leaning towards that, but he's probably going to play guard. So like, what's that center competition like? Is Luke Whippler going to be back for that? Is it going to be Parker Brailsford day one with the starters? I think that's interesting to look at, right? Like, and if they stick with Parker, if he ends up being the guy that they throw out there, right? If like 2 days into camp, they're like, oh, well, 2 weeks into OTAs or phase, whatever they're in, they go, oh, well, we're going to shift Elgin over, right? Like, then that kind of tells you something about where they think he is classroom-wise. But yeah, I think the alignment at offensive line, specifically center, probably the most interesting piece, because I'm like, I can see the argument for Parker Brailsford, especially after watching this tape. He didn't struggle with size that much at Alabama. I could see that working, but I wonder if that's what they want to do right now versus something that they'll have to do later, right? So it'd be interesting what the original plan is for some of these rookies, who's going to play a lot, who's not. I think another guy, look, we get so lost in sauce on the offensive side of the ball. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is going to be the guy we're talking about by the end of this, probably, right? Like, if we're talking about any of the rookies, it's probably going to be that dude there, because everybody who's ever seen this guy play in person goes, that guy's good.
And it's funny, too, that you bring him up, because, like, I almost, not to put, like, the expectations in terms of, like, what the end result was last year, but, like, looking back on last season, I had heard and talking to different people on the beat, and I had heard from different people talking on the beat that when it came to the level of respect that Carson Schlesinger had from that, locker room right off the rip was immense, but also the fact that you heard very early on, like, oh, he's getting the green dot, he's, really, like, looks like the best player out there far and away. And, like, you can tell, like, oh, this guy's just different. And, like, I had somebody in the beat tell me that immediately they thought, like, oh, yeah, no, like, that's Clay Matthews out there. And I'm like, all right, sweet. Okay, good to know that we're fine there. Like, I think that you're going to get, and again, not to put, like, at, like, the level of somebody like a Clay Matthews, but at the same time, like, I think you're going to get some rave reviews, because I think that we've honestly, and again, this isn't a slant to, like, Delpit, but, like, I think Grant's been great, but I also think that, we've been kind of starved a little bit for, like, truly great safety play. And I think that the way that Emmanuel McNeil-Warren plays the game is that he's very natural and he's very instinctual. And I think that we haven't necessarily had that quite as much in recent seasons. And so I think that for him in particular, like, him along with Delpit, I think is going to be, like, the combination that I think is going to be really interesting and really tantalizing, especially.
I would say the best way to put it for me is he's an opportunistic player from defense, right? And I think that's the thing, that the Browns defense has been very good for 3 years, since 2023, right? Even 2024, people are like, oh, it was a down year. They were like a top 10 defense that year, right? Like, dealing with the shittiest offense in the NFL. So, like, even their down year was pretty good, which is why, like, people are like, oh, it might regress. I'm like, if we regress to being number 2, to number 8. Okay, we
Yeah.
can live with that, right?
And that was my thought, is that like if there's a little bit of a drop off, like all it's going to be is going from top 3 to like top 8.
Yeah.
Okay, like oh god, we're in the top quarter of the league.
Well, yeah, top third of the league, and well, no, quarter. You're right. And here's the thing with the whole Emmanuel McNeil. I fucking lost my track. Hold on, where was I going?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're good. Where was I going? I had a point. What was I saying before that?
You were saying the drop off, like even if the defense is a slight drop off. He's a very opportunistic player.
Okay, yeah. That's the thing. The Browns have been very good. They haven't been very opportunistic. Every game you're like, we could have caught that fumble. We could have got that interception. I think the hope with Emmanuel McNeil Warren is that he's going to create more opportunities for this defense to be opportunistic, because he's just a very opportunistic, smart player, right? And I think that's where he is going to be the most notable, because Grant Delpit's been really good at things that people don't really pay attention to, right? And like it's like whenever people are like, oh, should we get rid of Grant now? I'm like, you want Grant. I promise you want Grant in the building. Yeah. They want Grant in the building, and he's cheap. So like, why not have Grant in the building? He's not a very, like, as far as safeties go, he's not very expensive. So like, why not? And even somebody like Ronnie Hickman is like, he's fine for his role, right? But you do want somebody back there. I think the frustration about safety is that we haven't had somebody who's opportunistic back there, right? And I think when people think about great safety play, they think of those opportunistic safeties, right? Those guys who can create turnovers, big kind of splash plays. And it's not to say that he's not going to be good at the non-splash stuff. There's going to be a lot of stuff where he should get credit for, but Carson Schlesinger just got there first because he's in a lower level of the defense, right? It's kind of the Mason Graham thing where like there's a bunch of stuff on Mason Graham's tape where I'm like, he should got more credit for that, but Miles got there. Like, so it ends up being a credit for Miles, right? Which is fine. You're still getting that production at the end of the day, right? I think he's going to be good in that way, but I think also, if there is somebody who's holding the ball a little loose, he's going to be the guy who notices that, and he's going to be the guy who peanut punches that ball out. If a quarterback's getting a little bit lazy on those 10-yard hitches they love to throw on the Browns defense on the opposite side when we're giving them off coverage, right? We've seen this before with Martin Emerson, where like Wandale Robinson almost had a 100-yard game off of those hitches. We've seen that. It is like, he will anticipate that eventually, and he's going to pick one of those off. I think that's really what makes him exciting and what's going to be fun about him. Also, it's going to be cool that he's wearing JOK's old number out there, and it'd be just nice to see that number be productive out there for the Cleveland Browns again. But yeah, OTAs I think should be very interesting, very fun. I'm looking forward to most of it, especially the things that will give us some insight over the team.